The night my mother called, I thought it would be something trivial. Flowers, seating charts, maybe a last-minute question about the rehearsal. Instead, over the clinking of glasses and muffled laughter from some party I wasn't invited to, her words cut through me like ice. "Claire, you are banned from your sister's wedding unless you apologize." I sat frozen in my Lakeview apartment, phone pressed to my ear, feeling the warmth drain from my hands as if the room itself had turned cold. "I'm Claire Miller, 29, a data analyst in Chicago. For years, I had quietly paid their hospital bills, covered their mortgages, even kept my sister afloat when she couldn't manage her own rent. I'd done it all silently, hoping one day they would notice. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't their daughter. Not really. Not even their sister. I was just a wallet they could throw away when convenient." The phone buzzed on the coffee table beside me, the late October wind rattling the window panes, carrying with it the muffled hum of Chicago traffic. I had barely settled on my worn couch with a leftover salad from the fridge, trying to unwind after another long day at Horizon Logistics, where spreadsheets and freight numbers devoured hours as if they were nothing. Her name flashed on my screen. A call from Mom rarely meant good news. Still, I swiped to answer. "Claire." Her voice was sharp, colder than the wind howling outside. "Hi, Mom," I said, forcing my tone light. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause. Behind her voice, the clinking of glasses, bursts of laughter, and what sounded like a party in full swing. Then came the blow. "You are not coming to Victoria's wedding," she said, flat and final. "Not unless you apologize to her first." I froze. The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. "What?" I breathed. "You heard me," she continued, her tone slicing through the line. "You embarrassed her at her birthday back in August. You made her look foolish in front of everyone. Until you apologize, you are banned from the wedding." I could hear the laughter on her end, the cheerful music, maybe even Victoria's voice above the rest, unaware of the storm I was caught in. "I didn't mean to embarrass her," I said quickly, my throat tightening. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when she was drowning in debt, and I was the one covering for her, over and over. "I slipped, Mom. I didn't." "No excuses," she cut in sharply. "This is Victoria's time. She deserves her day without you bringing drama." I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek, whispering to myself, "Respect." The laughter behind her phone sliced through me, every giggle and cheer a reminder of my exclusion. I pictured Victoria in the center of it all, glowing, smiling, the focus of every gaze. And me? Alone, exiled, told I didn't belong. "Mom," I said slowly, trying to steady my voice, "do you realize what you're saying? You're telling me I don't deserve to be at my own sister's wedding." Her voice softened, just slightly. "If you want to be there, do what's right. Apologize. Then maybe we'll talk about your place at the wedding. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't answer. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of traffic and the soft rattle of Halloween decorations outside, though it was already late October. Another burst of laughter on her end, another clink of glasses, and I felt the knife twist deeper. "I have to go," she said at last, as if my agony were nothing compared to the party behind her. "Think about it, Claire." Click. Deadline. I lowered the phone slowly onto the coffee table. My hands trembled against my knees. I stared at the blank TV screen, my reflection pale and small. My mind replayed her words over and over. Banned, apologize, not welcome. From my own mother. I leaned back, eyes closed, heart pounding, trying to steady my breath. How had telling the truth made me the criminal? How had my own family decided I was the enemy? Why did Victoria always get shielded, forgiven, glorified, while I was left carrying the weight, and now pushed aside? The neighbor's TV buzzed through the thin wall, sitcom laughter muffled, distant, almost mocking. Life went on outside my Lakeview apartment, ordinary and uninterrupted. Inside me, something cracked, sharp, irreversible. For the first time, I realized it wasn't mere neglect. I was being erased from the most important day in my family's life. I sat frozen, the heater humming low, and understood with cold clarity. No matter what I had given, no matter how much I had sacrificed, in their eyes, I was only worth as much as my apology. And maybe not even that. Even as a child, the rules were clear. There was one star in our family, and it wasn't me. I still remember the end of 5th grade, the school gym alive with parents and teachers handing out awards. Victoria, 2 years older, had just finished elementary school. She walked across the stage, her long blonde hair tied neatly in a ribbon, a radiant smile under the stage lights. Mom and Dad clapped like she had conquered the world. After the ceremony, they presented her with a new bike, shiny purple with a white basket. I stood beside them, holding a wilted bouquet of dandelions I had gathered outside, waiting for a glance, a nod, a whisper of acknowledgement. Dad ruffled my hair once, muttered, "Good job too, kiddo," then turned back to help Victoria onto her bike, oblivious to me. Summers followed the same pattern. Victoria was always whisked away to camp in Wisconsin. Weeks of canoeing, horseback riding, letters tucked in her trunk by Mom, who fussed over every detail. I stayed behind in Naperville, assigned chores, responsible for mowing the lawn, watching the house, cooking meals while Mom fussed over Victoria. I would scrub dishes, hear the neighbor's lawnmower humming outside, and imagine Victoria roasting marshmallows, laughing with friends under the stars. One night still burns in my memory. Uncle Tom's retirement party at our aunt's house. The dining room packed, glasses raised, chatter filling the air. Dad stood, holding a glass of wine. "Let's toast to Victoria," he declared, pride swelling in his voice. "She's been accepted to the advanced math program. She's destined for big things." Applause. Smiles, eyes on Victoria, as if she were the only one in the room. I had waited all evening to announce my own victory, first place in the district spelling bee. When I finally spoke, barely 2 sentences out, Cousin Kelly interrupted, shifting the attention back to Victoria's new extracurricular. My words vanished into the clinking glasses, swallowed by another round of praise for my sister. I learned to swallow those moments, to fade into the background like wallpaper. It became routine. Victoria's successes were broadcast. Mine whispered or ignored. Small details haunted me. Mom's eyes following Victoria, her voice rising in excitement whenever Victoria spoke. When I tried to share anything, even the smallest triumph, her gaze slid past me as if I hadn't spoken at all. I didn't know the words for it as a child, but I felt invisible. Lying in bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, I whispered spelling words, clutched ribbons I had earned. Imagined a world where someone looked at me the way they looked at Victoria. By high school, I stopped expecting attention. Victoria had volleyball games, cheer competitions, debates, Dad in his suit, Mom waving a camcorder. My science fair projects, choir solos, came and went with barely a glance. I'd walk off stage, scanning for their faces, only to find them turned toward Victoria, adjusting her hair, snapping another photo. At 16, I came home from an honors ceremony with a certificate tucked under my arm. Mom was busy ironing Victoria's prom dress in the dining room. I held up the paper, hoping, expecting, only to be met with a polite smile. "Honey, put that on the fridge," she said. And just like that, my triumph was invisible. My existence, it seemed, only mattered in how it contrasted with Victoria's perfection. "We need to focus on getting Victoria's dress altered before Saturday." I pressed the magnet against the paper in silence, watching it disappear beneath layers of Victoria's college brochures and invitations. The memory that still stings most came later that summer. I overheard Mom talking to a neighbor on the porch. "Victoria is our pride and joy. She's so talented, so full of promise. Claire's sweet, of course, but Victoria, she's special." I froze in the hallway, the words searing into me. Sweet. That was my role. Sweet and dependable, not brilliant, not dazzling, not unforgettable. I grew up surrounded by noise, applause, congratulations, constant praise, but it was never for me. Each overlooked achievement carved a little deeper, teaching me to stay quiet, to play the part of the reliable background figure. Sitting in my apartment years later, hearing Mom's voice banish me from Victoria's wedding, those childhood moments rushed back in sharp detail. They weren't isolated slights, they were a pattern, a lifetime of being pushed aside. I realized then that I hadn't just been forgotten. I'd been trained over decades to believe my place was always at the edge of the frame, never in the center, and deep inside, that belief had settled like stone. I was nothing more than a shadow beside my sister's light. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, the city sounds drifting through the cracked window. I thought of the girl clutching her spelling ribbon in the dark, praying for her parents' eyes to find her. Somewhere along the way, she had learned the truth. Attention wasn't coming, and the wound she carried was no longer a scratch. It was a scar. I turned on my side, pulled the blanket over my shoulder, and closed my eyes, letting the memories fade into the steady hum of the city outside. The scar was still there, pulsing faintly, but now I understood exactly where it had begun. After college, I stopped expecting anyone else to catch me if I fell. I worked double shifts at a campus cafe during my last year at the University of Illinois, just to keep up with tuition and my student loans. By the time I graduated, I had already grown used to covering myself, pinching every dollar, eating cheap takeout when I was too exhausted to cook. There was never extra, but somehow, when the family needed me, I always found a way to scrape something together. In the spring of 2019, Dad had a heart attack. I was on the night shift at Horizon Logistics, pulling overtime, when my phone rang. Mom's voice was ragged, barely holding back sobs. "Your father. They're admitting him for surgery." "The insurance won't cover everything, Claire. What are we going to do?" The number came a few days later. $14,000. Insurance would cover about half. That left $7,000 hanging over their heads like a storm cloud. I remember staring at my bank app, knowing exactly what my balance was. Just a little over $8,000 saved after years of saying no to myself. I wired the money that same night, sitting in the glow of my desk lamp, my hands trembling as I typed in the numbers. No one asked me how long it had taken to save that much. No one asked what I would have used it for. Mom just whispered, "Thank God, thank you," and hung up to get back to the hospital. I sat there in my empty apartment, the hum of the refrigerator in the background feeling hollow. I told myself it was what family did. You step up, you sacrifice. That sacrifice didn't end there. After Dad came home, bills kept showing up late. Mom called one afternoon, explaining they'd missed another payment. "It would be easier if everything was under your name," she suggested. "You're better with numbers, more organized." That's how I ended up holding the family's utility accounts. Electricity, water, internet, all charged to my card each month. The total averaged around $230, sometimes more when the winter dragged on and the heat never seemed to shut off. For 4 years, those payments stacked up, over $11,000. Not once did Mom or Dad take back the responsibility. It was as if they'd quietly decided I would be the safety net forever. And then, there was Victoria. She had a knack for calling right at the worst times, always when I was budgeting, always when I had just barely balanced my own accounts. "Rach, can you help me out? Just $500. I swear I'll pay you back next week. The rent's due, and I'm short." The first time, I wired the money, clinging to the hope she'd keep her word. The next week came and went, no repayment. Instead, she called again, panicked about a maxed-out credit card. $700 this time. "You're the only one I can ask," she said, her voice trembling, but her Instagram feed still full of rooftop cocktails and manicures. Another month, It was $350 for a last-minute flight to Florida. "I have to be there for work," she insisted, though the photos that followed were of sandy beaches and fruity drinks. Each time, the promise was the same. "Next week, I'll pay you back." Each time, I swallowed my frustration and transferred the money. By the time I finally sat down and added it all up, Victoria's debts to me alone totaled $16,375. I remember the night clearly. I was at my kitchen table, receipts and bank statements scattered around me, a calculator blinking in the dim light. My chest tightened as the numbers stacked higher and higher. $7,000 for Dad's surgery, $11,500 for utilities, $16,375 for Victoria's endless emergencies. The final number glared up at me. $41,875. I leaned back in my chair, the edges of the paper cutting into my fingers, my breath coming short, like someone had punched me. Nearly $42,000, money that could have paid off my student loans, money that could have been a down payment on a small condo, money that could have bought me freedom. Instead, it had evaporated into hospital bills, light bills, credit card bills, and my sister's getaways. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pick up the phone and demand they see me, really see me for the sacrifices I'd made. But when I pictured it, I knew exactly how it would go. Mom would say, "Don't make such a big deal. Family helps family." Dad would retreat into silence. Victoria would roll her eyes and laugh. "God, you're so dramatic." So I closed my laptop, stacked the papers, and sat there in the stillness of my apartment, my heart hammering. For the first time, I admitted to myself that I wasn't just being generous. I was being used. And the worst part was, no one seemed to notice or care. I pressed my palms flat against the table, staring at the total one last time before sliding the papers into a folder. My hands shook as I tucked it away, as if hiding it could dull the sting. But the number burned in my mind. $41,875. That was the price of my silence. That was the cost of being invisible. I sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of the heater until finally I turned off the light and left the folder on the table. It was still there the next morning, waiting like a wound that hadn't begun to heal. Thanksgiving that year felt like a stage play I had no lines in. I pulled into my parents' driveway in Naperville behind the wheel of my old Honda Civic, its muffler rattling as I shifted into park. The car had nearly 140,000 miles on it, the seats worn thin, but it was mine, and it got me from the city to the suburbs. As I stepped out with the pie I'd bought from a bakery on Halsted, headlights swept across the driveway. A silver Lexus rolled up, sleek and spotless, Victoria at the wheel with Daniel beside her. The moment they got out, voices rose in excitement. "Look at that car," one uncle whistled. "Daniel, you really treat her right." Mom hurried down the front steps, arms wide, nearly tripping over herself to greet them. I stood there with my pie balanced in my hands, invisible while the family clustered around the shiny new arrival. Inside, the dining room table stretched the length of the room, covered in a cream tablecloth, candles flickering in the center. Plates and silverware glinted under the chandelier. At one end, Victoria's seat had been decorated with a bouquet of small yellow flowers tied to the chair back. A little flourish, Mom must have added. My chair, further down, was bare, the cushion slightly torn at the seam. As we settled in, conversation spun in the same direction it always did. "Victoria, tell us about the wedding plans." Aunt Susan leaned across the table, her pearls catching the light. "Where are you going for the honeymoon? Have you decided on the colors?" Victoria laughed, tossing her hair back. "We're thinking Maui. Daniel's parents might even help with the resort costs." The table erupted in admiration. "Of course they will. You deserve it." "Maui? How perfect." I sipped my water, my throat dry. I wanted to scream the truth that night. I wanted to tell them about the promotion I had quietly earned last month, about the bigger accounts I was managing at Horizon Logistics. But every time my lips parted, the air was hijacked, dragged back to Victoria's centerpieces, Victoria's dress, Victoria's Lexus. Dinner was served: turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes. I passed plates, refilled glasses, plastered on a smile whenever spoken to. Then Aunt Carol chuckled, her tone laced with pity. "At least you're good with numbers, Claire. Not everyone has that skill. Someone has to be practical, right?" The table laughed, not viciously but carelessly, and that carelessness cut deeper than cruelty. I forced a smile, my cheeks burning. "Yeah," I whispered, "someone has to be." Every bite of turkey turned to sawdust in my mouth. My eyes kept flicking to the flowers tied neatly on Victoria's chair, bright, golden, celebratory. My own chair sat bare, frayed at the seam, as if mocking me. The night twisted further when Daniel boasted about buying the Lexus. "She deserved an upgrade," he said, and the room applauded. My father raised his glass, his pride swelling. "To Victoria, our shining star." Glasses clinked. Victoria beamed. And me? I sat frozen, fingers crushing the fork, fury clawing up my ribs. For years I had swallowed every slight, every oversight, every moment my worth dissolved in their blind adoration of her. But in that instant, I wanted to erupt, to remind them I was here too, to scream that I had wired $7,000 to save Dad's life, that I had carried their bills on my shoulders month after month, while Victoria flaunted vacations and shiny cars. But the words jammed in my throat. The air thickened with roasted turkey and candied sweet potatoes. I forced it all back down, choking on silence. Yet inside me, something cracked. The laughter sounded sharp, cruel. I wasn't just overlooked, I was diminished, reduced to utility. A background shadow, while Victoria basked in the glow. When dessert arrived, pumpkin pie, apple crisp, I tasted nothing. My thoughts raged, louder than the chatter. Anger, raw and undeniable, boiled inside me, no longer buried but pulsing, demanding release. Later, as I carried the empty pie tin to my battered Civic, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles blanched. The Lexus gleamed under the porch light, Daniel holding the door for Victoria like she was royalty. I drove into the dark suburbs, headlights slicing through the cold. My chest burned, my jaw clenched. For the first time I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. And I knew something in me had snapped. At work, the weeks bled together. Spreadsheets piled high, deadlines smothered me. Horizon Logistics wasn't glamorous, but it branded me as dependable. That word stalked me everywhere. Home, office, family, dependable. One Tuesday morning, Grace Turner appeared at my cubicle, my manager. Sharp, composed, mid-40s, her presence a calm authority that commanded attention. She caught me hunched at the keyboard, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Claire," she said, voice firm yet gentle, "let's take a break." "Come with me." Deadlines loomed, emails flooded. I hesitated, but her gaze was immovable. I obeyed. We walked to the cafe down the block. Warm lights, the scent of pastries wrapping the air. She ordered a cappuccino. I clung to cheap black coffee. Across the table, her eyes locked on me. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." I forced a laugh, brushing it off. "Just busy." Her gaze didn't falter. I've been in this field long enough to know when someone's running on empty. "You take on too much. Everywhere, not just here." Steam curled from my cup, blurring my vision. I dropped my gaze, unable to answer. The words hit like a blade because they were true. "Can I tell you something?" Grace asked. I nodded, bracing myself. "Boundaries," she said slowly, "are not cruelty. They are love with a backbone. Without them, you'll break, and you'll keep enabling people who should be standing on their own." Her words pierced deeper than I expected. "Love with a backbone," I whispered, forcing a smile. I'll keep that in mind. But the truth, I didn't fully understand. Not yet. Later that week, in the break room, I caught voices drifting over the hum of the coffee maker. "Did you hear?" "Mark just got into booth," one colleague said, pouring sugar into his cup. "Part-time MBA, starting this fall," another added. "Booth," I echoed under my breath. "Yeah, University of Chicago, Booth." Someone turned toward me. "Tough program, but incredible." "Honestly, Claire, you'd be perfect for it. You're sharp, disciplined. You could thrive." I laughed too quickly, trying to shield myself. "Me? I don't know. That's expensive, competitive." But the seed had been planted. That night I sat in the dim light of my apartment, laptop open, glow flickering across the cluttered table. I typed it in. University of Chicago Booth MBA. The site unfolded. Photos of polished students in glass-walled classrooms overlooking the skyline. Words leaping off the screen. Leadership, transformation, future. My heart pounded. Excitement and fear twined together. For years, every dollar had gone to them. Every dream had been deferred. I had never dared to imagine something for myself. Leaning back, eyes on the city lights, I pictured it. Walking into those classrooms, investing in my future, not just patching holes in everyone else's. The ache in my chest wasn't pain. It was longing. The next day, Grace stopped me in the hallway. "Did you think about what I said?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did." Her smile was steady, kind. "Don't wait too long to put yourself first. No one else will do it for you." Her words echoed through me like a drumbeat. That night, I pulled the site back up. My cursor hovered over request information. Fear and hope collided in my stomach. If I stopped carrying everyone else, maybe I could finally carry myself somewhere better. I clicked. The form appeared, my name waiting to be typed. My hands trembled, but the thought no longer felt impossible. It felt like a door cracking open, light spilling through. The first snow of December spiraled past my window, the city muffled in white. The heater rattled, but my apartment still felt cold. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, stacks of unopened mail around me. I pulled up Excel. In the first row, I typed 2019, Northwestern Memorial, heart surgery, $14,000, insurance covered $7. I had wired the rest, $7. 000 gone in one night. My stomach tightened as the cell filled black. Next line, utilities, ComEd, Nicor Gas, Xfinity, 2019 to 2023. Average, $230 per month. 4 years, $11,500. I remembered Mom laughing on the phone. "The internet's so fast now, I don't know how you do it, Claire." She never realized the reason her movies streamed smoothly was because I had quietly paid for it. Then came the list. Victoria, rent, August 2020, $500. Victoria, credit card, January 2021, $700. Victoria, flight to Miami, May 2022, $350. Another payment, another empty promise. By the time I totaled her column, the number blazed across the screen. $16,375. I stared until my vision blurred. Every number on that spreadsheet felt like a blade cutting into me. Each dollar a wound no one ever saw, a sacrifice buried in silence. By the time I reached the final line, my throat burned raw, fingers ice cold on the keyboard. I slammed the autosum button, heart pounding like it might burst. The number flared on the screen. $41,875. The air left my lungs in a jagged rush. $41,875. Money that could have been the key to freedom. A condo with my name on the deed, a chance to slash my student loans in half, a passport stamped in places I'd only dreamed of. But it was gone. bled out into surgeries, utility bills, and Victoria's vacations by the ocean. My chest seared, as though the total had been carved into bone. I shut my eyes, but the memories crashed through. Dad's surgery that hollowed me out, Mom's trembling voice begging through tears, Victoria's texts laced with hearts and exclamation marks whenever she wanted more. None of them had ever asked what I lost to say yes. None of them had ever seen me. When I opened my eyes, the spreadsheet glared back, merciless, undeniable. I hit print, the machine snarling awake, spitting page after page like evidence in a trial. I snatched a yellow highlighter and slashed it over the ugliest numbers. $7,000. $11,500, $16,375. The ink bled like warning flares in the dark. I stacked the papers, slid them into a cheap blue Walgreens binder, and with trembling fingers scrawled on the cover, "What I have done, and what I will no longer do." The letters leaned crooked, but they were mine. For a moment I only stared at it, this fragile, furious record of my life. Then I saved the file, the sharp click echoing through my silent apartment like the snap of a lock. Something uncoiled inside me. Not peace, not joy, but release, raw and terrifying. I closed the laptop, set the binder on top, and sat in the stillness. Snow drifted outside, smothering the city in white silence. I didn't know what waited beyond this night, but staring at that binder, one truth burned clear. I had finally drawn the line. The next morning, I carried that binder in my bag like a concealed weapon, its weight crushing and steady. Wind sliced across my face as I marched toward the Chase branch on Michigan Avenue. Inside, the warmth of the bank hit me, the scent of paper and ink sharp in the air. A young teller lifted his head as I approached. "I need to cancel an authorized user on my credit card," I said, sliding my ID across the counter. My voice didn't waver, though sweat slicked my palms inside my gloves. He tapped the keyboard, eyes narrowing. "The additional cardholder has been active this month. Are you sure you want to remove her?" I locked my gaze on his. "That's exactly why I'm here." He hesitated, then nodded. "Once I process this, her card will stop working immediately." I signed the form, my signature sharp and uneven, but final. A bolt of adrenaline surged through me, equal parts terror and liberation. In my mind, I pictured Victoria at some boutique, arms full of clothes, swiping her card with her careless grin, only to see the word "declined" burning across the screen. Walking out of the bank, I pulled my coat tight. The air bit into my skin, sharp, cleansing. My next stop, a T&T. For years, our family phone plan had been chained to my name, 4 lines feeding off my account. Only one belonged to me. Mom, Dad, and Victoria had been coasting on my credit month after month. The clerk scrolled through my account, eyebrows lifting. "You want to split this plan?" "Yes," I said flatly. "Keep my number." "The rest, transfer them to their own accounts. They'll need to come in and set those up themselves," he warned. "I know," I said, gripping my purse tighter. Paperwork dragged for nearly an hour. Signatures, initials, endless waiting. By the time I stepped outside, the confirmation slip crumpled in my hand. My whole body shook. But it wasn't fear this time. It was relief. No more paying for group calls I was never part of. No more covering data for FaceTimes I was never invited to. No more silent bleeding. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding them up. I was standing for myself. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the glow of the laptop burning against the dim room. My fingers hovered like they were holding a detonator. Then, click, remove payment method. The ComEd portal refreshed, no card on file. A tremor shot through me. I did the same with Nick Gas, with Xfinity. Each confirmation email dropped into my inbox like gunshots in the dark. Proof that the invisible chains I'd worn for years had finally snapped. But fear slithered back. What if they came after me? What if they called me heartless? What if I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross? The next morning, I walked into HR at Horizon Logistics. Binder heavy in my bag, voice casual, though my pulse roared. If someone is paying for family accounts, but everything's under their name, are they legally trapped? The HR manager leaned back, her pen tapping. If the accounts are yours, and you've been paying voluntarily, you're not bound. They should move services into their own names. You're not legally tied unless there's a signed contract. Her words cracked something open in me. Later, I met James, an old acquaintance from undergrad who had gone to law school. Over coffee, he studied me carefully. "Claire, it's your card, your account, your money. No one can force you to keep paying. Worst case, they're inconvenienced until they take responsibility." The chains weren't real. They had only existed because I'd carried them. That night, I sat at my desk, binder open, my inbox glowing with confirmation emails like silent witnesses. My hands shook, not from fear this time, but from release. I pictured Victoria, nails polished, laughing with her friends, swiping her card, only to see the screen spit out declined. Her smile falters. For once, she feels the sting. The thought wasn't sweet. It was jagged. Satisfaction laced with sorrow. I didn't want her ruined. I only wanted her, all of them, to see the weight I had borne alone. I shut the laptop with a hard snap, set the binder on top, and leaned back as the radiator hissed. Outside, snow tapped at the window. My chest loosened, breath finally steady. For the first time, I had given myself permission to breathe. The morning of Victoria's wedding, I sat with a cold cup of coffee, her wedding website glowing on my screen. RSVP, registry, seating chart, her perfect world on display. My name was gone. Where Claire Miller had once been listed under family, there was nothing. Erased. On Facebook, her photo gleamed. Bridal robe, flawless curls, captioned, "Family first, forever and always." The comments gushed. "You look stunning. Daniel is so lucky." But all I saw was the lie. Family first, as long as it wasn't me. I slammed the laptop shut, the table rattling beneath it. The walls of my Lakeview apartment felt like they were closing in, memories clawing at me. Empty chairs at Thanksgiving, conversations I was never part of, silence swallowing me whole. My phone rang, slicing through the stillness. Mom's name lit the screen. I answered, bracing. Her voice was sharp, panicked. "Claire, the mortgage payment didn't go through. The bank keeps calling. There'll be late fees, maybe worse. Did you forget?" A laugh scraped out of me, brittle. "I didn't forget, Mom." I canceled it. The silence was icy, then a gasp. "What do you mean you canceled it?" "Claire, you can't just—" "I can." My voice was flat, cold steel. "It's not my responsibility anymore." Noise swelled behind her. Voices, glasses clinking, the hum of celebration. They were already at the Hilton ballroom, already living the day of Victoria's dreams. And she was calling me only because the money was missing. "We don't have time for this today," she hissed, lowering her voice. "This is your sister's wedding. Just please take care of it, and we'll talk later." I let silence hang, heavy as all the years I had swallowed whole. Then, softly, I said, "I'll bring a gift." And before she could speak, I hung up. The blue binder felt like a weapon in my grip, its rough cover digging into my palm as I stared down Victoria, her perfect wedding smile cracking under the weight of my words. "This is the time," I shot back, my voice slicing through the glittering ballroom. "Because every toast, every compliment, every lie built around you has been paid for by me." The crowd stirred uneasily, forks clinking against plates, whispers hissing like sparks. Mom's face drained of color, Dad's jaw tightened but neither spoke. Daniel's glass lowered, his eyes darting to the highlighted transfers. the proof stacked like ammunition at the cake table. I stepped closer, binder open, pages flashing under the chandeliers. $7,000 for Dad's surgery, $11,500 in utilities so your lights never went out. $16,375 of your debts, Victoria. While you drove a Lexus and sipped cocktails, I sold pieces of myself to keep this family afloat. Victoria's mask slipped. Her voice shook, shrill. You're pathetic, Claire. Always jealous, always bitter. This is my day. A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp and raw. Jealous? I wanted recognition, not roses. Respect, not hand-me-down gratitude. And today, you don't get to silence me. Gasps rippled. A guest dropped a fork. Daniel's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his gaze burning into Victoria. Is this true? He demanded. Did you use her like this? Victoria sputtered, hands trembling around her glass. She's twisting it. Daniel, she's just trying to ruin. Enough! My shout cracked across the ballroom, louder than the music, louder than the lies. My hands slammed the binder shut with a violent snap. The sound echoed, final and merciless. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every guest frozen, their champagne flutes half raised. Victoria's cheeks flamed, her veil trembling with her breath. For once, all eyes weren't on her. They were on me. I stood tall, chest heaving, the storm I had carried for years finally unleashed. I am not your safety net. I am not your shadow. And from this day forward, I am not your victim. The binder sat heavy on the white linen, its cover stark beneath the glow of gold chandeliers. The truth was no longer hidden. It was here, undeniable, carved into the heart of her perfect day. Jealous? That's your excuse? The words cracked through the ballroom like lightning. I stepped forward, binder still in my grip. Jealous of what, Victoria? Of the Lexus Dad won't stop bragging about? Of the wedding you couldn't even afford without draining me dry? I was the ghost at every dinner table, the silent one paying the bills so the lights stayed on, while you got the spotlight. The stem of Daniel's glass snapped in his hand, crystal exploding against marble. Silence swallowed the room whole. All eyes swung to him, jaw locked, gaze locked on Victoria like a man watching a mask peel away. For the first time all night, her confidence cracked, her smile wilting. The band froze mid-note, silverware stilled, laughter died. My voice had torn open a wound no one could pretend not to see. Victoria's throat worked, but no sound came. Her face blotched crimson, bouquet trembling in her grip. Daniel's stare drifted down to the damning papers spread across linen, his expression hollowed, as if meeting a stranger in a white dress. I let the silence choke the air before I spoke again, steady, sharp. I've carried this family's weight long enough. Tonight, I'm done. No one dared move. Guests sat suspended, trapped between champagne and collapse. For the first time in years, I stood taller, chest heaving with a breath that tasted like freedom. The crunch of glass broke the stillness, Daniel stepping back, his polished shoes dragging against shards. A wave of whispers rippled, suits shifting uneasily, women clutching purses as if bracing for impact. Some guests slipped quietly to the doors, unwilling to stay for the storm. Victoria's voice snapped like a whip. You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've done? This was supposed to be my day. Rage twisted her face, mascara smudging in dark streaks. Mom's sob tore through the air, napkin pressed to her lips. Claire, how could you do this on her wedding day? Her voice was fragile, breaking, yet it hit like a knife. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. A chair scraped and Aunt Margaret rose, her gray hair catching the chandelier light. Her words rang with iron. Enough! If it weren't for Claire, this family would have collapsed long ago. Do any of you even realize what she sacrificed? The ballroom fell into a hush so heavy it trembled. Her words couldn't be taken back. Victoria snapped toward her, wild-eyed. "Stay out of this. You don't know anything." But it was too late. The whispers had shifted. Heavy, now, with doubt, with shame. At the far end, Dad sat slumped, hands locked, eyes hollow. He looked broken, older than I'd ever seen, unable to lift his gaze from the floor. Daniel moved, just one step back, but it was enough. The distance screamed louder than words. Then, without a glance at his bride, he turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed, cold and final. Victoria lunged, hand outstretched but clutched only empty air. The fairy tale had shattered. Guests rose, voices colliding. Did she really pay that much? I never knew. The ballroom that had been dripping in gold now felt like a cage collapsing inward. Victoria's scream cut through the chaos. "You jealous little bitch! You couldn't stand me happy, so you dragged me into the dirt with you." Mom gasped. Relatives dropped their gazes, unwilling to meet mine. Margaret stood like stone, her silence louder than defense. Victoria's venom stung, but it didn't pierce. Not anymore. Something inside me had hardened. Unshakable. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible shadow. I was the reckoning. I straightened slowly, the blue binder sliding back into my bag with a deliberate scrape. My eyes swept the room, faces frozen between pity and unease, not one showing the blind devotion they once showered on Victoria. My voice cut through the silence, carried farther by the microphone than I meant. "I didn't destroy your wedding," I said, low but steady. "I just stopped covering your lies." The words dropped like a blade. Victoria's chest heaved, bouquet trembling. Mom's sobs cracked the stillness, while Dad remained carved from stone. The picture-perfect family pride had shattered into jagged shards. My heels struck the floor with sharp clicks as I turned toward the exit. Behind me, the ballroom erupted. Panic, whispers, accusations. But I didn't look back. At the doors, I paused just once, eyes catching the long row of chairs. Mine sat empty, a hollow space draped in lace. I pushed through, and the heavy doors boomed shut behind me, locking in the chaos. The corridor outside was dim, the air cool and thin after the suffocating glow of chandeliers. I inhaled deeply, the first steady breath I'd drawn in years, and kept moving. Morning came under a gray Chicago sky. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. For a heartbeat, I wished it had been a dream. But the moment I opened my screen, reality roared back. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Victoria's wedding filled every feed. The glittering ballroom, the Lexus, the 5-tier cake. But it wasn't the images that pierced me. It was the comments. Did you hear what her sister said? Family money doesn't mean her money. She's been living off Claire for years. The once flowing hearts and praise had dried up, silence swallowing her loyal circle. A few cousins broke ranks, blunt in the open. If not for Claire, the Millers would have lost the house. I set the phone down, palms over my face. No victory rush, no sweetness in her downfall. Only a strange lightness, as if I had set down a stone I'd carried too long. My apartment's silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was peaceful. By afternoon, a text flashed from a coworker. "Claire, did you see what's happening at Victoria's firm?" Attached, a screenshot of LinkedIn chatter. Colleagues at her marketing agency questioning her credibility. Whispers that her biggest client might walk. I stared at the screen, breath leaving me slow and steady. Consequences finally hers to bear. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where I had once bled numbers into spreadsheets, calculating what I'd lost. The blue binder rested beside me, shut but heavy, like a silent witness. I pulled up the University of Chicago booth MBA portal again. Grace's words echoed, "Boundaries are love with a backbone." My fingers hovered, heart pounding. then began filling line after line. When I hit submit, the confirmation landed in my inbox. My chest ached, but this time it was with hope, not despair. Later, I opened my banking app. The envelope marked Family Emergencies was gone, emptied into 100 calls and desperate pleas. That chapter was finished. I transferred the last of that account into a new one. I named it Aurora Trip. Notes: Iceland, Northern Lights. The number was small, but it was mine, untouchable. I leaned back, staring out at Chicago's restless lights. My phone buzzed again, but my chest didn't clench. Whoever was calling, whatever they wanted, it no longer mattered. The money, the dream, the future was mine alone. I clicked off the lamp. The glow of my screen flickered across the walls, and for the first time, the room felt wide open. The air was lighter. I pressed my palms together, forcing a breath into my lungs as though steadying myself before a storm. For the first time in my life, the future didn't feel like a chain. It felt like it belonged to me. A year swept by, and winter returned to Chicago with its cold, relentless grip. Snow clawed at the windows of my Lakeview apartment, streaking down the glass in thin silver lines. I sat curled in an armchair, fingers wrapped tight around a mug of cocoa, watching the city burn faintly against the dark sky. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. The sound made my chest tighten. Memories of midnight demands, frantic pleas for money. But the name on the screen froze me. Dad. I hesitated, heart pounding, then answered. His voice was rough, strained as though dragged across gravel. Claire, it's me. Silence stretched. Then came the sigh, deep, ragged, broken. You've saved this family more times than I deserve to admit. Paid bills that were mine, carried burdens I should have shouldered, and I never thanked you. Not once. I was wrong. His confession cut through me like a blade. My throat burned, my eyes stung. I gripped the mug against my chest, needing its warmth to steady me. You don't need to be perfect, Dad, I whispered, voice trembling but firm. I just need to be respected. He cleared his throat, heavy with emotion. You deserve that, more than that. Maybe one day we can try again. My lips trembled as I answered, I hope so too. When the call ended, I sat motionless, the city's hum pressing softly against the silence. For years I had been invisible, unheard, nothing more than the family's silent lifeline. Now, even if his apology came years too late, it was enough to loosen the iron knot in my chest. Mom's messages had shifted, too. No more sharp demands, just hesitant check-ins. How are you? Victoria, once so loud and untouchable, had fallen silent since the wedding. Whispers filtered through relatives. Her shine had dimmed, her pride cracked. But for the first time, I felt no hunger to compare myself. No need to measure. Silence was victory enough. I rose from the chair and pressed my palm to the cold window pane. Chicago's skyline glittered back, thousands of lights winking like scattered truths across the horizon. For once, I didn't feel left behind. On the counter, pinned to a corkboard, was my Booth MBA acceptance letter. Next to it, a small glass jar labeled Aurora Trip, heavier now, fuller with every $20 bill I tucked inside. Each deposit was a promise that someday I'd stand under the northern lights in Iceland, not as a shadow, not as a servant, but as myself. I thought of the girl I once was, the silent child at the dinner table, the young woman wiring money in secret, the sister dismissed as dramatic. That girl had been crushed by shadows, but she had survived them, and survival had become freedom. I lifted the mug once more, the cocoa sweet and warm on my lips, and let the quiet wrap around me like armor. Family, I realized, only counts as love when it's built on respect. Without that, it's nothing but debt in disguise. Real love doesn't vanish when the money does. Real love has boundaries. I set the mug down. inhaled deep, and allowed myself a faint smile. If you've ever been your family's wallet, carrying their weight in silence, tell your story. No one deserves to drown alone, and maybe, just maybe by speaking, you'll find the same freedom I found.